In this lesson, we're going to cover every tool of the toolbar in Adobe XD. First up is the selection tool, and you can press V on the keyboard to access this. This one is the simplest tool, and it's the one you're going to use the most. If I click on an element, you'll notice I have it selected by the blue outline. Also, I have these editable points. If you're wondering what these dots are inside of this corner, I can adjust that, and it will give me the border radius value. So you can see that I'm adjusting that over here on this side. Once I have something selected, I can hover over the corner and you'll see that I have the rotation option. So if I click and drag, I can then rotate the shape. If I combine this action with Shift, it will rotate in increments, just like that. If I want to scale this shape up, I can simply scale it from the corner. If I combine that with Alt, it will scale straight out from the center point. And if I combine this with Shift, it will keep this a perfect square. So for example, if I want to increase the height of this rectangle, I can drag straight up. But if I also want to increase the bottom value as well, I can hold Alt and you can see that I'm adjusting both values at the same time. If I want to select multiple elements, I have two ways of doing this. One, I can click and drag, and this will select every element inside of this blue selection square. Or I can select one, then hold down Shift and select as many elements as I want. To deselect an element, just continue holding Shift and click on it again. If I want to create a copy of something, I can hold Alt and just click and drag, and it will make a duplicate of the original. If I release Alt while dragging, I'm now moving the original around. So if I continue holding Alt, you'll see that I'm now making a duplicate. Another thing you can do is when you have a shape selected, and if I start dragging and I hold Shift, it locks the axis that I'm adjusting. So I can no longer adjust the Y axis. I can only adjust the X until I release Shift. Same thing goes if I start dragging up or down and then I hold Shift, I cannot adjust the X axis of this shape. This can come in really handy when you want to create a duplicate and you want to make sure you don't adjust the height value. So for example, if I hold Alt and start dragging, I can then combine this with a Shift to make sure that I don't adjust the Y value at all, and I get the perfect spacing I'm looking for. And everything is still perfectly aligned. If I hit R on the keyboard or I go over here, I can grab the rectangle tool. If I click and drag anywhere, either in the artboard or the pasteboard, I can create a rectangle. If you hold Shift, this will make this a perfect square. If I hold Alt, it will drag out from the center of the shape. And if I combine Alt and Shift together, it will go from the center and keep it a perfect square. That's pretty much it for the rectangle tool. Same thing goes with the ellipse tool, which is right below the rectangle tool, and you can use E on the keyboard to access that. Again, if I just click and drag anywhere on an artboard or the pasteboard, I can create an oval or a circle, and by holding Shift, it will make sure it is a perfect circle. And if I hold Alt, it will go out from the center point, and if I hold Alt and Shift, it will continue going out from the center, but it will be a perfect circle. Below the ellipse tool is the line tool, and this is L on your keyboard. If I click and drag on the screen, I can create a line. Holding Shift will make sure it is a straight line, and I also can rotate it at these angles that it locks at. If I hold Alt while dragging, I can drag out from the center, and if I combine that with Shift, I can then drag a straight line out from the center point. Below the line tool is the pen tool, and that's P on your keyboard. This one's probably the hardest tool to learn, but it's really not that difficult once you get the idea of it down. When you click on the screen, it will create points, and you can create a custom shape to do this. You can also curve these instead of having these at straight angles like you can see here. So if I click and drag, it will give me these two handles, and that way I can adjust the curve of this line. If I continue on, you'll notice that Adobe XD continues the curve because of this handle. And I can go back into an angle if I just click instead of clicking and dragging. Also, once you have your shape done, you can then add more points by hovering over the line and clicking anywhere, and I can drag and adjust these as needed. Also, if you want to change something from a round to an angle like this, you can double click on the point and it will give you these handles that you can then adjust. If I don't want this, I can either undo that with Command Z or Control Z, or I can just double click back on it to change it to an angle, and then I can make further adjustments. So the pen tool is one that I would highly recommend you get in and just really work around with it because it's really hard to look at. You need to actually do it to really learn it. Below the pen tool is the text tool, and this is T on your keyboard. And if I click, I can then start creating some text on the screen. Also, if I click and drag, I can create a text area where my text will be defined based on this box. Below the text tool is the artboard tool, and this is A on the keyboard. And with this selected, it's basically like the rectangle tool, except it creates an artboard. So everything applies here that applies to the rectangle. If I hold Alt, it scales out from the center. If I hold Shift and Alt, it creates a perfect square. And if I just hold Shift, it creates a perfect square. So this allows you to create artboards any size that you would like. You can get the exact pixel width and height if you want by adjusting it over here on the property inspector. And the last tool is below the artboard tool. That is the zoom tool, or Z on the keyboard. If I click on the screen, it will zoom in. If I hold Alt and click, it will zoom out. And if I click and drag, it will zoom into that defined area that I have selected. So that is it for the basic tools of Adobe XD. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. As always, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.